So these Pali phrases, Sīlena bhoga sampada, means through virtue comes wealth and prosperity. Sīlena nibbutiṃ yanti, through virtue one goes to peace. Tasma sīlaṃ visodhaye, therefore one should purify virtue. So welcome everybody. Today I'd like to give a talk on the subject of freedom and liberation, liberty, called In the Cage. Our liberation from suffering often begins with noticing the cages we're already in. No locked doors, no iron bars in the windows, but habits of speech, patterns of reaction, and stories we repeat ourselves, and about others. Criticism can become a cage, fault-finding. Anger can become a box, a trap. Identity, even a spiritual identity, can quietly turn into a straitjacket, a heavy sack that we carry around without questioning. We don't usually mean to trap ourselves or others, but certain ways of speaking and reacting tighten conditions rather than release them. And once something tightens, then suffering follows quite naturally. So take a breath. Does that feel familiar to anyone? Let me give one simple, everyday example. A recent conversation, a family moment, a recent irritation. My sister and me. It's kind of a lifelong thing, actually. My mum has passed away, and we were expecting that. And my sister had called me and said, "I've got some bad news, bruv. Mum has passed away." And I said this, well, we were expecting it, weren't we? And then I went on to say, during another conversation, well, it's probably better that it happened that way, rather than being a very long, drawn-out process. And I was going to go on and say, some people go on in that state for years. But my sister interjected and said, "No, I don't agree." It's a strange thing to say. I was trying to say some people go on for 7 or 8 years in deep pain, and that would have been a bad thing. But she said, no, I'm right. I was there. I know all about it. So we did have a long drawn out thing. I said, no, it was only a month, So this is the kind of real example, contemporary example. Unhealthy criticism often sounds like authority, dominance, or somebody who's super confident, acting bossily, or being all-knowing. And it assumes that the person knows and understands the other person's intentions. It provokes, it dismisses, and it escalates. It narrows perspectives, and it fuels resentments. Instead of understanding, it creates defensiveness. Instead of resolution, avoidance. As a result, slowly trust weakens. And the relationship becomes another trap, another confined space, another barrier. Flash temper. This works in the same way. The body reacts, the mind jumps in, and suddenly we're locked into a pattern before reflection has had a chance to enter. Not because we're bad, but because conditions have lined up very, very, very quickly. This is dependent origination happening in real time. First, contact. We hear what's said. We have a feeling. We crave, and we wish it wasn't, and we wish it was. And then we're becoming something. We're becoming opposite. We're becoming something. And suddenly we're inhabiting a pattern that we didn't consciously choose. It just spun out of control and got to where it got to. So let me ask, at which point could this have gone differently? At the contact, at the hearing of it, hearing, and it's gone. When there was feeling, my shoulders are tensing up, or my stomach feels really sick. I notice my hands are squeezed, or my hands are on my hips. My jaws are tense. When we feel craving inside, I wish I wasn't in this conversation. I wish I wasn't. I wish they weren't. I wish they hadn't said that. When becoming jumped in, I'm never going to be this. I'm never going to be that. This will always be the other. So becoming comes up. So I invite you to just sort of do some internal reflection. Not sharing, just reflect by yourself and think about that. See if you can see dependent origination in some situations that you're familiar with. That dependent origination I was saying, it has this wanting to be, wanting not to be in it. Bhava and vibhava. Someone said, wasn't it better to be no one instead of a big someone? So this is fair enough. It is one interpretation how the teaching appears to be. And for sure, all of us, myself included, fall into the trap of wanting to be a someone. Suddenly there seems an opportunity. We can be what we always wanted to be. Or there's an opportunity. Or I appear to be a someone. Or I'll just be a no one here. I'll just vanish and not be a part of it. I had a brief experience of something a bit like this that had a bit of an amusing spin out that I want to share with you. It's a little bit funny, but it came out of a very dark and tragic place. So it's a family, actually in the Philippines, who had a very, very seriously unhappy daughter. But that daughter was a single mother, 32 years old. And then there was a tragedy. I got a call. The daughter had terminated her own life. And this is craving, not becoming. So it was very tragic, very dark. And I was invited to go and be there with the family during this time. So I went through it with them and spent some time with the family while they're in the grieving process and the shock process. And as a part of which, the mother invited me to consider opening an art gallery with the remaining son, who's like 18 years old, 17 years old. And I thought about this, and I thought perhaps it's a good idea. Get him focused, and we'll process what the family is going through. Because also art nowadays is very quick to do. It doesn't take much effort. And also the printing of it onto canvases is very fast. So I did this. I produced about 20 pieces of kind of surreal art on the theme of this dark process of dying and the loss and the grief and so on. So they were very dark pictures. That was the mood of the group. And yet, when the mother saw them, they reminded her so much of the lost daughter, and realized that I wanted to just leave them there with the son and his gallery, and he was going to go on and do a gallery with them, that she completely changed her mind somehow and decided, no, she doesn't want to do that at all. So this was another non-becoming. We don't want that idea that I created. No, let's not make it. And please don't leave these pictures here. More non-becoming. So I was stuck with 20 canvases of pictures, and I didn't know this, what was going to happen. So I was going to go to Australia next, and I said to them, okay, I'll post them on to Australia, because I won't just leave them here if that's what you want. And including that, you're not allowed to send artwork from the Philippines out of the country. It's a kind of a law. So somehow I had to figure it out. So I located the FedEx, and I got a taxi with the 20 pictures, and I said to myself, well, whatever happens, I'll have them in Australia, and then I can just do whatever, bury them, burn them, or give them away, or whatever. So the taxi driver arrived. I got in the taxi with the 20 pictures or canvases and headed off to the mall. But the taxi driver wasn't allowed to go into the mall. He had to drop me off about 1,000 meters outside the mall. So with these 20 things, rolls and tubes, I had to carry them, walking, all across a baking hot, rippling hot car park full of thousands of cars towards the mall. And there were 2 security guards. And the mall was literally something like half a mile or 3/4 a mile wide. It was enormous, one of the biggest malls I've ever seen. And I was looking at it. Where am I going to find the FedEx in there? It's enormous. I know it's in there. It's on the map. So I went up to the security guard and I said, excuse me, do you know where I can find the FedEx? So he looked at me puzzled, and then he bit his lip, and he went to the other security guard, and they discussed something in Filipino. And then he came back and he said to me, what kind of fried eggs do you want? I love these. This is one of my favorite things in life, is the mishearings, when people mishear stuff like that. So in the end, I did find it. I posted it off to Australia, and apparently, as far as I know, they're still there in a tube somewhere in the back, someone's back room. So, for sure, the person who was deciding to end their life was operating on this, I want to be a no one. I want to be a void. I want to be a vacuum. I want to disappear. So, the problem there is that it can be misleading if you're not careful. And this is why I'm always a little bit cautious when I hear people say that kind of thing about becoming better to be a no one. So it can be taken too far. Okay? So craving to be a someone, a big yes. I want to be famous, I want to be wow, I want to be rich. They're all I want to be. But craving non-becoming, wanting to disappear or negate oneself, is also a form of clinging. And the Buddha was very clear on that. Both sides, wanting to be, not wanting to be, keep the wheel of samsara turning. So we had a great opportunity to receive the Dhamma in action the other day, as if the Dhamma wanted to illustrate for us. We had the day trip, and monastics, lay people together. We were on a beautiful car drive through lush green fields, mountains in the background, an animal liberation weekend. Fantastic. What did we do? We opened cages, we lifted lids from boxes, and we opened sacks, bags. The birds within were released and fluttered upwards, free into the sky. Amazing experience. What do you remember of that? I remember really vividly, it was the turtle that I picked out. Most of the other ones were heading inside their shells. But this one was scrabbling and trying to climb up the bucket. I picked him up. And first of all, he was extremely, or she was extremely nervous, or was really extremely nervous to find out who I was. And then I stroked his nose, stroked the head, and chanted, Karaniyang Mata Kusalena. And then he just made eye contact with me and just held it there for a long time, like, oh, so you're not a chef. You're not going to cook me. Wow, you're a monk. Wow. You know, I've been freed. So there's nothing dramatic. It was just a knowing, a silent communication, a little bit of animal communication. Turtles, fish, the fish, puzzled at first, but then gratefully relieved as they slipped from their transport bags and splashed into the freedom of the river, not getting cooked that night. Frogs hopped, splashed, and then joyfully hopped and vanished into the reeds, saved from the painful experience at the market and the eateries. Locusts leapt and scattered into the bamboo grove, their natural habitat. So there was nothing dramatic. It was just something that was understood by us all, that together we had removed their entrapment. So it's a great act of mercy, very beautiful concept. Whoever thought of it? Liberation for humans isn't always about this kind of thing, always. But it isn't always about becoming a new someone or becoming an invisible kind of no one, a kind of shadow. Both ideas may reinforce desire and aversion, wanting to be and not wanting to be. So it's about removing unnecessary limitations and confinements. And yes, we released beings into a stream, so technically there was a lot of stream entry on that day. Much easier than the real thing. And this is where I wonder if in future we can try monkey liberation. There's some people outside. Come. Or what we usually call monkey mind liberation. So monkey liberation, a little live release that we can do here and now. All you have to do, close your eyes for this exercise. Ready? And not think about a monkey. Meh. I bet nobody could do it. The first thing that pops into your mind when you try to have no monkeys is monkeys. So this is the lesson in that. In the past, we're told there was a very cruel monkey trap. It was a small wooden box with a chain on it, fixed, and it had a tiny opening in, just big enough for a monkey's hand, and inside some food, nuts or banana. The monkey reaches in, the hand fits, but once the monkey grips the food and makes a fist, it cannot get the hand out again. It's trapped. The door is too small. The monkey isn't trapped by the box. It's trapped by refusing to let go. And that's monkey mind. Grasping, tightening, and pulling harder when the only freedom is in release. Once there were 3 monks. And one was from Myanmar, and one was from Sri Lanka, and one was from Malaysia. So the first two, Myanmar and Sri Lanka, were arguing. Why were they arguing? Well, the word for blessings in Pali is Mangala, as far as I'm aware, Mangala. It's also used to mean like a silver gold bracelet. But in Myanmar, they often changed the letter A to the letter I when it comes to Pali. So Mangala becomes Mingala. Mingala ba, they say, like blessings to you. Mingala ba. So Mingala, the Myanmar monk said. No, it's Mangala, said the Sri Lankan. Mingala. No, Mangala.
Mingala, Mangala, Mingala, Mangala, back and forth, louder and louder and louder. Each one is convinced they're right. I know I'm right. Until the Malaysian monk stepped in and said, no, not Mingala, not Mangala, Mangala. So this was a case of not only a case of monkey liberation, but monk liberation too. Sometimes the problem isn't correctness, it's the gripping and not letting go. We refuse to let go, to admit it's not worth clinging to the idea that we're right and they're wrong. Liberation isn't about someone who is this or that, someone who is right. It also isn't about being no one and nothing without anything to say or be, a shadow. Okay, a quick story. You know, I was doing teaching in the Philippines. Well, at the school, there was one boy, and I gave questions every class, 12 questions or 10 questions per class, to all the class, and they had to fill in the answers on paper to get things moving. So there was also this kind of big cycle of new questions from all the classes. So they were going round and round, and they would answer them just to get things moving. They would give one question back. So one of the boys answered the question that came up from that particular class. Question was, if you could be any person, alive or dead, which one would it be? And perfectly fair question. His answer was, alive. He's supposed to say something like Abraham Lincoln or, you know, like some great person. If there's anyone you could be, alive or dead, who would it be, or which would it be? So he didn't answer Jose Rizal or any sort of famous person. He just answered, alive. And the next second part of the question was, and explain why. So he looked at it and he said, because it's better to be alive than dead. That's the charm of working with teenagers. They're full of this kind of innocent but straightforward intelligence. So it's not about letting go of the fist. It is about letting go of the fist, letting go of the rigid grip, and not digging in our heels. So the hand becomes free, the heart becomes free, the mind becomes free, and can unclench and release. And this is the secret also of forgiveness. So ask yourself this. What are we refusing to let go of? Refusing to let go of being right? Refusing to let go of being offended or insulted? Refusing to let go of being seen or not being seen or being labeled? Healthy communication does the opposite of trapping. It observes rather than accuses and blames. It stays specific rather than vague or stereotyping. It owns experience instead of assigning fault to others. It invites dialogue instead of closing it. It validates feelings, our own and others, without inflaming ego identities. It de-escalates instead of intensifying and repeating. Likewise, with anger, pausing, breathing, stepping back, and listening. So these aren't precepts, they're not moral rules that are imposed from outside. They're more mature when they arise from within. They're ways of loosening conditions so suffering doesn't have to arise. The body settles, stored tension eases, the mind follows, and space opens. And in meditation, the same principle applies. Body and mind struggle when one tries to dominate the other one. When the body dominates the mind through excess eating or sleeping, excess talking, or even excess exercise, like those bodybuilder people. When the mind dominates the body through perfectionism, overachievement, over-control, stress, dragging attention into the past or into the future, replayed conversations and imagined events. Stress.
Harmony comes from acceptance and inclusion with the breath as the bridge between the two. Awareness without judgment. Patience instead of force. So we come back to this liberation. Not as a grand idea, like a political thing, but as a small release, a word not spoken, a reaction softened, a pattern seen clearly enough to loosen or let go. The cages we open aren't just out there in the world. They're in habits, reactions, tones of voice, and confined identities. And each time one opens, suffering lessens a little. Not becoming a hard-to-please someone who's always right. Not becoming a no one and disappearing into passive aggression. Letting what's boxed up go free. To let it fly, let it swim away or dissolve into the bamboo grove. Released. Okay, I invite you to breathe, calm and conscious. I invite you to notice your body. Just presence.